Yes, I want you to picture something. How many of you guys are Disneyland fans in here? Decent amount of people. All right. Yeah, got some so-sos. So imagine this. Imagine you have been longing to go to Disneyland for a long time, dreaming about it, years. And finally you get your license and you're able to go on your own. So you find a few friends, you hop in the car, you leave here, and you think, we're going. We finally can make it. We're in the place in life where we could get there, so you go. But you want to get there quick because you've been waiting for it. You've been really wanting to do this. So you take off from here, and you're a bit cavalier with the law, right? So you burn rubber getting out of here. You get on the 52, and by the time you get to the whoop-de-doos on the 52, there's a few scratches on your car. You're like pushing it, almost getting air there, and you just keep going. You're excited. You're stoked. Finally, you get on the 5, and there's been some close calls. You've almost gone off the road a few times, but your car's still going. And so you're going up the 5, and you see the Mormon castle. And you think, that isn't Disneyland, but it's close enough. And you pull over, you pull in there, and you feel like you've arrived. You're where you want to go. That would be pretty dang ridiculous, right? Not to mention, I'm not even going to get into all the Mormon stuff. We're going to leave that for another message. But I bring all that up because we often approach dating and marriage this way, where we think about it, we dream about it, we have all these plans and expectations. We can't wait till we get to a stage in life where we can actually work towards marriage. And then finally, when we get there, we speed things up. We rush to get into things. And along the way, we deal with some blows. There's some damage, some hurt, some wounds. We almost get off the tracks a few places. And then too often, we settle for something that is less than what we wanted, less than what we dreamed about and we're aiming for. But we're willing to pull off early and accept that because at least we're there and it's a little bit quicker. We know we can get to that spot. I don't want that for us. We started this dating series talking about how we've all been blessed by healthy, good relationships, especially healthy, strong marriages. And we've all felt and seen the hurt that comes from unhealthy marriages and relationships. And we're running after something different. So we began by defining our goals and really defining what it means to be in each area of relationship, friendship, dating, what a healthy, godly marriage is. Right? Last week we talked about how to get out of the friend zone, how to enter into dating relationships, and doing the heavy work in our lives that we need to do, but then also really paying attention and looking towards who we want to be dating in a way that is going to help alleviate a lot of the challenges. And so today, what I want to do is get into the practical. All right, your boyfriend, girlfriend, you're dating, it's official. Now what? What do we do from here? And I want to specify something. The goal in dating is clarity, and the goal in marriage is intimacy. Now, I want to break this down. You guys have heard me say this in the last couple weeks, but the goal for dating is clarity. What we want to answer is this person that I'm dating the person that I want to enter into the covenant of marriage with? Is this the right person for me to make this lifelong commitment with? And is this person the one that's going to help me honor God and accomplish the things, the call that God has put on my life? Can I do that with this person? The whole point of dating is to be really, really clear about that. Now, that's a big question. And we're complicated people. Well, I mean, like really complicated. And girls, really complicated. So it might take a while to answer that question. That's not something just like, oh yeah, we're good. You know, you want to spend some time figuring that out. But then in marriage, the goal is intimacy. Now, what I mean by that is once you are really clear on that, then intimacy is you two coming together. The Bible says a man shall leave his mother and father and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. That means they're one, they're united. And the goal is for intimacy, you two to come together and be closer and closer so you can, with one mind and one heart, go after the things that God has called you to do and accomplish within marriage. So that's the mindset that I want to approach everything tonight, is we are going to set up some boundaries. We're going to talk about what's permissible and not permissible in dating so that ultimately we can answer the one question and with clarity: is this a person that I should marry? So before we jump into the practicality of all that, I want to talk a little bit about why boundaries are important. You know, in the world, the term boundaries can seem kind of archaic. And the world has boundaries, but not very many. And most of the boundaries the world has it could be summed up like this. Does this feel good? If so, it's good. And is this not good? Does it not feel good? Okay, well then no, don't do it. Like, that's the boundaries of the world. But there are a whole lot of flaws with that way of thinking. But the way God has created us adds another element of challenge to dating and to making sure that we can have a dating relationship that we pursue clarity. So we can actually we can keep that blank for a while. I'll let you know. Thank you. Here's the way God created us. And this is gnarly. I'm going to go. So when you start to fall in love with someone, or you start to develop an infatuation, even like not just an attraction where someone walks by and you're like, right? Which there's some issues with that we'll talk about. Like, you hopefully aren't doing that every time someone walks by. But not that. But where you really are getting to know someone and you're like, dang, like this person, I really like them. When that starts to develop and happen, I want you to picture an hourglass flipping over. And what happens, the way we were created, is in our brain, these neuropeptides start being released. And these things, when you're in a relationship, you start a relationship, the hourglass flips, these things start to release. And typically it takes about 12 to 18 months before that hourglass is emptied out. And you're like, what are these neuropeptides? Well, they basically give you the warm, fuzzy feeling. They give you the like, ooh, I'm in love feeling. That I'm oversimplifying it a little bit. They add to that. They emphasize. They build that. And God created us this way because we're created. There's a bonding effect that can have. And that's good. That can be helpful if you're in a relationship where you've done all of this homework, where you've built yourself up. You know that you're in a place where you can date. You've really done work in making sure the person you're interested in matches, has the same values that you have, and is someone that you should be pursuing. And then these neuropeptides can help you out. But if you haven't done all of that, and then you're in this place, in this state, in a relationship where this is what Dr. Helen Fisher talks about the effects of these neuropeptides. She says that you have an increased energy, euphoria, sleeplessness, impulsivity. Think about when you started dating someone and you're like, I just can't even sleep at night. And you would impulsively just go do things with that person or spend money or say things. You would blurt out, I love you. I mean, dang it. She goes on. She says, you become emotionally dependent on someone. Adversity heightens passion. Now that's dangerous because some adversity could be your mentor, your wise counselor, your parents saying, hey, they're crazy. Don't do that. But these neuropeptides, adversity heightens passion, which literally means when challenges come against you, it makes you want to double down. And the last thing she said was, you can't stop thinking about that person. These neuropeptides, this love potion that God built into us, right? If we enter into a relationship that we haven't really done what I told you guys last week and the week before to do, then it can make a dating relationship, which point is clarity, it can add a lot of murkiness to that, right? It could be harder to tell if this person is really the one if you're a little bit blinded by love. So I bring that all up because this could be a good thing and unite two people if we approach a dating relationship properly, or it could be a really dangerous thing that allows us to miss things that we don't want to miss. Now, God created us to be united in this way. It's interesting, this 12 to 18 months. In my brain, in my framework, that could get you, if you start dating at the right time, right about time to marriage. And then God created this other incredibly useful tool to unite two people. It's called sex. And if within marriage, that could unite you even further and bring intimacy. But if your timing's off and you do all of these things backwards, then it's really easy for you to be in a relationship and feel like someone is the one, when really you're just love blind, right? So all of that I want to bring up, because that's going to help us understand if the point of dating is clarity, then what are the things we need to do so that we can have that clarity within dating without getting caught up in this love blind or love sickness or whatever it is, right? So we have to set up some boundaries. So what type of boundaries should we set up? I'm going to describe to you guys some physical ones, some emotional ones, some spiritual ones, and we'll do a little bit about financial. But before that, if you start dating someone, here's what you do. You remember I told you guys in the tryout, you ask someone, you go up and say, hey, I like you, I want to go on a date with you. Then you have 2 to 4 dates to decide, hey, are we going to become boyfriend, girlfriend, or are we going to go back to being friends? Let's say you go on those 2 to 4 dates, you're like, I really like them. You become boyfriend and girlfriend. The very next date, you get together and you write out some boundaries. Right away, you want to have boundaries. Now, you get out a piece of paper, and on the top of the boundaries, you write the why. Now, what I mean by that is, remember the quote I said in the very beginning of the series? If you know your why, you can endure, anyone? Anyhow. If you know your why you're doing something, then you can endure anyhow. And that speaks to so many different aspects of our lives. We can endure something really, really difficult if we know why we're doing it. We can endure a lot of challenge if we know why we're doing it. And we can so often get into a relationship, you get together and you're like, all right, I'm going to write boundaries out. Why? Because my mentor says I have to, or because it's a Christian thing to do, or what, you go through the motions and you write out some haphazard boundaries, and then you don't stick to them because you don't have any conviction to stick to them. And so at the very top of your boundaries, right away, before you get into any details, I want to encourage you guys in a relationship to write down why you want to have boundaries in the first place. And this section cannot be too long, right? If you have to use a legal piece of paper because of how much your why is, that's fine. If you want multiple pages, you get like a whole new journal, and the first half of it's all the why. It doesn't even matter. Write down the why and break it up. Talk about the pros. Why do you want to keep these boundaries? It's so God can be glorified in my life. Right? It's so that this relationship can lead to a healthy marriage, and we don't have all these roadblocks or speed bumps or issues along the way. You can write down, I want to keep these boundaries so I can honor my parents, and I can honor my pastors, I can honor my mentors, I can honor the kids in the ministries that I work in. Because we've all seen kids get hurt because the person they look up to does not enter into relationships the way we're called to. Write out the why as much as you can. Write out verses. Flee sexual immorality. 1 Corinthians 6:18. Flee youthful lusts. 2 Timothy 2:22. Let no one look down on you for your youthfulness, but rather in speech, conduct, love, faith, and purity. Show yourself an example to those who believe. Write all of these things down. If you know your why, you can endure anyhow. So if you start dating, make that a priority. Cool? Everyone with me? So let's say you did that and you spent a lot of time on that. That's going to give you the motivation to keep these next things. So you're dating, your goal is clarity. What are the physical things that you need to keep? I want to encourage you, a healthy relationship has control of the progression of these things. A healthy relationship, if you're dating, you're in a healthy relationship, you have control of how your physical boundaries, your spiritual boundaries, your emotional boundaries, how they progress in your relationship. Now, that's going to be a little bit different for each of us. If you're 18, 19, and you're not going to get married realistically for 3-4 years, then that progression, that time, you have to slow that progression down. Now, we don't like doing that because if you're in a relationship, you like each other. And naturally, you're going to want to be with each other and to really be with each other. Like, that's the way it goes. That's the way we were built. So a healthy relationship is going to let boundaries and wise counsel control this progression and not, hey, it's late at night, and I know we said we weren't going to do this, but I think now's a good time to break these boundaries. We're ready for the next stage. That's not when you decide, okay? So what do we figure out? You first ask yourself this. I'm going to break it down from this. Where you go, what you could do, when you talk, and how much time together. That's how I'm going to break it down. So first boundary is, where are you guys able to go? And I want to encourage you, if you're dating, you want to be in public places. Now, some of you are like, well, like we want like time on our own. I'm not saying you have to just be in group dates and your mom or dad have to chaperone all the time. Some of you have cool parents. That's still awkward. Like, that could be weird. Like, I'm not saying that. But you could go to a public place. It's really hard to start making out. It's less hard than it once was, all right? But it is still not socially, it's kind of weird if you start making out in Starbucks. It's just, I have issues. Don't go to the Starbucks by Santana after school gets out. Do you work at that one?
No, but I work at Starbucks and I hate it when you...
All right. Don't be that person, all right? Now, so go to a public place. And where can you go? When I was dating, I wanted to avoid going to my house or my now wife's house when no one else was home. Don't be home alone. Where can you go? Not into each other's bedrooms unless the door's open. You want to have that mindset where you pay attention to where you are so you don't find yourself in a setting where it's easy to compromise. Where do you go? I want to encourage you, when the car stops, you get out immediately, right out. That center console is not the dividing line that we think it is, all right? Doesn't run interference the way we want it to. So what can you do? Here's some of the boundaries you guys were looking for. You start dating. I'm going to give you guys a pass. Hold hands whenever you want, all right? I know, you guys, you're welcome. You're welcome. You guys, hugging, as long as you don't pretend you're penguins trying to stay warm, like a quick hug, you're dating, you're adults. I feel okay with that. I did talk to someone earlier that they don't want to front hugs for a while. And their progression is going to take a while till they're married. And I don't think that's fine with me. I don't feel like they're doing anything wrong there. I think you have to guard yourself in this area. So holding hands, hugs, I know I sound like a crazy Puritan and stuff. Go ahead and do that. Now here's the catch. The next level requires you to have counsel. Because kissing is one of those things that we are just once you kiss, then you guys have seen those charts where it's the exponential and it starts out and then it's just like, what in the world happened? I want all my investments to look like that. I want all your relationships to look nothing like that. You go like this, you're like we made eye contact. It was something special. We're starting to date. We're holding hands. We're hugging. We're kissing, and now we're making out. It goes. And some of you know I'm not just being ridiculous. The longer you could wait to kiss, the easier it is going to be to avoid what comes next. And that's just the truth. And so if you're in a relationship where you know you're not going to, on a timeline, be able to be engaged in a year, then you need to be aware, Because the sooner you kiss, the sooner that you're going to have to battle wanting to make out. The sooner you make out, and making out, this is just factual. Making out is telling your body to get ready to have sex. You're just telling your body that, hey, this is what I want to do. This is where I'm going. And so I honestly want to encourage you guys to not make out as long as you possibly can. And if I could wave a wand, I would say don't make out until you're engaged. And if then, some of you, depending on your self-control, maybe not then. Now, I know some of you are like, that, David, you're crazy. But some of you also know the battles. When you start making out, your hands get bored. You start making out, you just make bad decisions. Your body is preparing for the next level. And so that's on you. But I'm telling you, it's just the longer you could put that off, the better. And remember, the goal in dating is clarity, not intimacy. And if I'm making out with my wife, like I'm not gonna think clearly, right? And that's not how it works. That's not how our brains were wired. And so if clarity is the goal and we add all these physical things to our relationship, it's gonna add some murkiness to that. A few other things I want to encourage you in. Stay vertical. So, if you're watching a movie together, like, don't be laying next to each other. Bad news bears. Here's a good boundary I want to encourage you guys in. If you can't see it, you can't touch it. So just, if it's covered up, your hands don't go there. 2 blankets. That's enough said. 2 blankets. All right. So you want to physically watch where you go. Physically, you want to touch how much you're together. You want to physically set limits on how much you talk. Now, there's 2 ways this comes up. Either the timing that you talk. Now, our brains, the longer we are awake during the day, the more our willpower battery drains. That's just how it is. So there's nothing good that happens after midnight. And for some of us, especially you Starbucks workers that get up early and open, that's like 9 o'clock. So if you're dating, there's not much you need to say after 10 p.m. And there's very little you need to say before 8 a.m. And so those timelines you can set yourself, but I think they should be basically 10 and 8, and you could work it out. Now, if there's a little bit of wiggle room for other reasons, but ask yourself really, what is a quality of conversation you're having after that? And is it one that is like playing the line with these other boundaries that we're going to set? And if you honestly feel like, all right, I can adjust, that's on you and your mentors and stuff, but I want to set some like goalposts that you guys can work with. But also, not only when you talk, but how much you talk. Now, there are some relationships that I hear, like, oh, text me 25 times a day, 30 times a day. Now, you guys, you don't start dating and you become this island and it's just you two. That's not healthy, right? And you don't, in dating, need to be with each other all the time. And I'm going to say something really crazy because I'm old, but this whole sharing your location thing, I don't even understand. But if you want to do that, whatever, but you don't need to do that. Like, you don't need to share your location with each other. That's not necessary for a dating relationship. And so I want to encourage you, if you're dating, have nights where you do ministry separate. Or there's nights when you need to do schoolwork or you need to do stuff. You don't have to spend 6 or 7 nights a week together. You can have some time off. That doesn't mean you're unfaithful or things like that. And you could tell them, like, hey, I'm at ministry. I'll text you afterwards, unless it's after 10 o'clock. But all right. Now, so those are some physical things, all right? Any questions about that? All right, now remember, the friend zone boundaries apply to all other relationships. If you don't know what those are, week 1, go see them. All right, now emotionally, what do we set up? What are our boundaries? Well, emotionally, you want to guard what you talk about and promises. Now, what you talk about. Now, the goal is progression, right? And a healthy control of this progression. And the goal is clarity. So at first, you can know you're on a first few dates and you tell them like, hey, my relationship with my mom, it's complicated. Okay. And then maybe a second relationship, you go into more details and you slowly unwrap that. But it's not this like, this is my life and every detail and all my inner child wounds and all of this right away, right? It's a slow progression of that. But even that, we want to be careful that we're not dependent on this person for our emotional well-being when we're just dating and we don't know what's going on. There's not clarity yet whether we're going the distance or not. You guys with me? So this is a boyfriend or a girlfriend. They're not your pastor. They're not your counselor. They're not your mentor. So there's a different line, and that progression can happen, but it's slow. The other thing you want to be on guard is promises. So you could say stuff like this. This is what I would do in marriage. And maybe even that you take some time before you say that. But you're not saying, I promise I will do this for you. Or I give you my word. Or together we will accomplish this. Those promises, you don't want to make those in the clarity, the testing stage of things. So, physical, emotional, spiritual. I love this boundary. I would encourage you guys to set on your boundaries where you don't talk until you do devotions. Devotions before dating. Now, some of you are like, that doesn't work. I do devotions in the middle of the day or at night. You guys work it out. But God's our priority. And so that one is just, that's extra. It's free devotions. I want to encourage you guys not to do devotions together for a while. And if you do devotions, and then eventually you could do devotions where you do the same thing, but maybe even that not together for a while. Now, eventually your relationship, you're going to want to be on the same page spiritually. But that's going to take some time. And my relationship, I don't want to tie it into someone else that I don't know how long they're going to be there or if I'm still trying to figure that out, right? So I want to create some boundaries there and have that be a healthy progression. Same with prayer. I've gotten some pushback from people like, hey, you say people can't pray together if they're dating. I think in high school, I'm more weary of that. You guys, if you're dating, you could pray together. But even your prayers, again, there's this healthy progression where you're not like really crying out, opening up, confessing things to each other, and then praying over those things together in an unhealthy way. Your spiritual relationship, you don't want it wrapped up in someone else until there's more clarity. Cool? So that's physical, emotional, spiritual, and I just want to touch on real quick financial. Yes, if you just started dating, don't break the bank. Don't do this. And if you're broke as a joke, like don't go out and go into debt because you're dating someone, right? And if you're girls, if the guy's cheap and he has money, you can like be frustrated with that. That's fine, right? I know this girl who's dating this guy and they dated for like a year and split the bill every time. But he would order like the more expensive thing and then they would split it 50-50. And I'm like, that's cheap and bad math. And he had a job like that. But I had a really close friend who was in school and did not have money. He was just doing everything he could to scrape by. And while he was dating this girl, he had his goal. He knew where he was going. He was in school. He had this timeline. It was going to work out. But in this season of life, they were not going to fancy dates. Or if so, he wasn't paying. And that's the situation he was in. That made sense. So again, with that timeline, there's some other things they had to figure out. But all right, so those are boundaries. All those. Any questions? All right, so now here's what you do. You have your page, your boundaries, right? You write the why, that can't be too short. You write the physical, emotional, spiritual, maybe financial. And then at the bottom, you write the consequences. And you're like, dang, right? Everything in life has a consequence. You break something in real life, you break the law, there's consequences, mostly in our society. But you break something, you have to pay for it, right? So if you're in a relationship, there's gonna be consequences, right? If you sleep together, before marriage, there's consequences. So we want to build in consequences to our boundaries so that we don't pretend like they're not there. And so that it helps steer us away from breaking these boundaries. And you could put in boundaries like, if we break this boundary, we have to not talk to each other for a few days. Or if we break this boundary, instead of being able to spend these nights together in this time, we have to remove one of those. Or, hey, we gave ourselves liberty to go do this, and it was still a public place, but quasi-public, so you can't do that anymore. You put in boundaries, you figure that out. One boundary I want to encourage, or one consequence, is you call your mentor. As soon as you break a boundary, you call them or text them, hey, we did this. Let someone else into it. I used to have this guy, I invited him to ask me, just check in on how things were going. So I was dating Courtney, my wife, and randomly I'd get a text, hey, where are your hands? That would be it, right? And so it was just a random check every so often, and it was great. It was healthy, it was good, and I was all right with that. Now, last thing, and we're going to get onto a timeline. Long distance dating, usually you swap breaking physical boundaries with breaking emotional boundaries. All right? And so you're going to have to be careful with that. And if you're in a long distance relationship, you got to get to being in person as quick as possible. Or you're going to have to be very weary of. It's not as bad with FaceTime and things as it used to be, but it's just difficult. And that one you're going to need to meet with counselors and get wisdom on a little bit further. All right, so let's figure out a timeline. Cool? So here we go. You start dating, then you immediately write boundaries, and then these next two, getting to know each other and getting to know each other's family, it's a progression. And now that could take, for some of you, you're like, I'm going to spend a month together before I introduce them to my parents, because if I introduce them to my parents, they're going to set the wedding date, and it's just too much pressure, and I need to calm down. And you have to be the judge of that, again, with wise counsel. Meet someone. Some of you, you're like, there's no way I'm dating someone without my parents giving it the approval. If you have a good relationship with your parents and they love the Lord, then and you put that before number one, I'm fine with that. That is cool. Yeah. Yeah. And hopefully you're having those conversations. If that relationship's there and that's possible, that is another wise counsel to help bring into your relationship. But so I put that up there because some people are like, man, it's been 6 months, 8 months. I'm nervous to bring them in front of my family. And I'm thinking, either your family is really bad, or what's going on? Bring them over. Now, you guys, I have a crazy Sicilian family, and my wife, I started dating her, and my great-grandfather who came over from Italy died 2 months after. And he was this really cool dude. He fought for Italy in World War II, but then was captured by the Germans and almost died after. He's a cool dude. But when he died, there was all this family drama. So my wife shows up to the funeral that's half in Italian, half in English, and she's dealing with all these crazy Italians fighting and stuff like this. And she had to know what she was getting into. It was early on in the relationship, and I'm really glad she saw that, because it was no surprises, right? This is me, this is my family. You guys are going to marry each other's families. So make sure, don't wait too long to introduce them. And just to be fair, your family is an aspect of the deal. And sometimes some of you are like, that's a bummer. I'm being real. And you got to work that out to what degree, like, why is that a bummer? And is it things that you can help? Is it things you can't help? Is it things where you're like, hey, that's my family, but this is how I'm different. This is how I honor the Lord. I'm assuming they're sinners. And if it's not, like, you got to work that out with wise counsel, okay? All right, so you do all of that. Now, here's the next step. Once things are getting serious, you're like, all right, I think marriage is really in the direction we're headed. We're seeking out clarity, and what I'm finding is I really feel like this might be the person I marry. Then you take the pre-marriage class here at Foothills. Now, some of you are like, dang, that just escalated quickly. Now, here's the deal. I don't believe in premarital counseling. I believe in pre-engagement counseling. Here's why. We often take premarital counseling, and we've already made up our minds that this is a person I'm going to marry. You've already spent a lot of money on a ring, and we all know that the venue and that huge down payment happens real quickly after that. So you have all of these things working against you in making a clear decision. This is the way our pre-marriage counseling works here at Foothills. It's 5 to 7 weeks, something like that. And our goal is to make sure you ask each other a whole lot of questions. We want you to, at the end of that class, have a real clear picture of this is why I'm getting married, and this is the person, this is why I want them to be that person. And we go over a bunch of stuff, right? The roles of marriage. We go over conflict. We go over family. We have a whole week on sex. That's the class that I taught last time. It's fun. And then you meet after that one-on-one with a pastor or a counselor, and they talk over things. And so I will sit down with a couple, and I'll say, hey, and you take a compatibility test. And that shows all the areas where you're in line, or you complement each other, or where you're way off. And I sit down with someone, you would sit down with Danny or someone like that, and we say, hey, this is an area where you should really grow. This is an area of concern, or this is great. Now, you want to do that still. All of this is in the testing stage, the evaluating stage of dating. What I mean by that is you're still seeking clarity. If you've already figured it all out, if you're set, I'm going to marry this person. They are the one for me, and nobody's going to tell me any different. Well, then what's the point of counseling? Really, let's be real. But you want to figure it out kind of earlier, and then after that, hopefully we'll give you a few things to work on, or we'll give you 2 thumbs up, and you have even greater clarity. Cool? So doing that before you are unwilling to hear the questions and really answer them truthfully is important. Then after that's engagement. Then after that is marriage. Cool? Now, you guys have all seen that? Oh, so good. Timelines. If you're 18 or 19, and you plan to go to college, you're not in your career, and so you still have school and career to do, then realistically your timeline is going to be 3 to 5 years, right? Now, I believe that you could be married and in college, but it's complicated, it's difficult. And in San Diego, it's especially difficult, right? And so you're going to have to get some wise counsel there. Now, I met my wife, I was 21 basically, just about to turn 21. She was 20. I was just about to graduate. It was my junior year, so I had one more year of school, and I was working here. My timeline was a lot shorter because of that. So if you're 24 and you start dating, then I feel like you should be able to get through you should be able to get to step 5 in about a year, at least starting the pre-engagement. All right? Year and a half. If you're 24, 25, you have your career, you have all that, you've been dating them a year and you're still not sure, then I have some other questions. And I don't think you listened to the first 2 parts of DTR, right? But if you guys see what I'm saying here, I can't give you an exact timeline. But a healthy relationship controls the progression of boundaries, controls the progression of these things. And the older you are, the quicker you can become because of the place in life you are and the more you know yourself. Cool? So that's the timeline. We're almost done for tonight. Any questions about that? Yes, sir. That does make it, that kind of steps up the seriousness of it. So you still want it earlier enough in the relationship where if your parents have that position where they could say like, hey, I think you need to rethink this, then you don't want to be, looking at rings by the time you get there. But it might push it a little bit. But even then, if it's with FaceTime and everything, try to introduce them sooner via those things. Then it's not as big of a commitment. Yes? Yeah. So guy-girl relationship, because of what we have to offer and what we're looking for in a relationship, a guy being older like that and a girl being younger within reason, I feel good with that. Now, too young, and then you have other issues like guy, this is kind of weird. But, within a certain age range, thinking wise counsel, 24 and 19, I'm not really stressed about that unless she's like, depending the girl and her maturity. If you flip those and the girl was 24 and the guy was 19, then I have concern there. Because, and I'm just being real, and this is like not politically correct, but remember, a girl is looking for security and provision in a guy that's going to really take care and provide for her. And a guy's looking for more companionship needs. And so you flipping those two, and it's going to be really hard for both of them to have their needs met. And it's also going to be harder because a guy younger like that is going to want to go do more physical stuff. And just a 5-year difference isn't crazy with that, but anymore. And a girl could be like, I can't have more kids, or I can't go do those things. And that could throw a big wrench into things. So I didn't, to be honest, I didn't know that was a thing. I came to church in middle school, and my wife's dad kind of offhandedly said something like that, and I'm like, oh no, I messed up. But he just was making fun of me, which he likes to do, and I make it easy. So if Jade that's a position, like you want your dad to play that role in your life, the girl's gonna need to make sure the guy knows that is part of the deal. All right? If girls, just in general, don't give guys hints. All right? Tell them what you want, and that's best in life. So, of all things, over 3 weeks, that's it. All right. Bunch of punks. But just girls, you have to make sure the guy knows that that's an expectation or it's something you want. All right? In general, though, if the dad isn't a strong Christian or it doesn't play that role in your life, sometimes that might not be the best. Yeah. All right. So you've been dating, you're seeking clarity, and you gained it. And the clarity is this: you guys aren't meant to be together. The clarity is, hey, we're not headed towards marriage. I dated a really wonderful young lady in high school for 14 months, and then I figured this out. And I really liked her. And she's just great in a ton of ways, and I realized, but I'm not going to marry her. That's hard. When do you break up with someone? You break up when you know that things are not headed towards marriage. You stop wasting your time and you stop wasting their time. That's a bit brass, but that's what it comes down to. You break up if you're in habitual sin. If you guys are sleeping together, and you guys can't get a hold of that, you just need to break up. You need to put God first. And you need to break up if things are unhealthy in some other ways too, right? Like if things are just unhealthy abusive, you need to break up. So how do you break up? You call them, you say, hey, let's get together. Sometimes it would be best to say, hey, I need to talk to you. I need to talk to you about something serious. Depending the relationship, that might be something you say right as you arrive. But you go somewhere together. You go somewhere where you meet them. You don't drive together. That adds a whole level of complication. Then you go somewhere you're not sitting down at Ruth Chris. Like you're going to a lighter, more casual place to talk. When you get there very early, you don't wait and have small talk. You say, hey, I need to talk to you about something. And then you say, hey, we need to break up. You're being really clear. You're not lollygagging. You're not hurt. You're just saying, hey, we need to break up. Now, hopefully things have been discussed before, and you could say, these are the things why. Or you could say, hey, I'm just at this place where I understand we are not going to get married, but I really like you. Now, just so you know, that's not going to make it much better. Breakups are hard. They're hard. They're difficult. If you've been dating 3 months, it's hard. If you've been dating 9 months, it's hard. And you can't realistically expect everything to go back the way it was. That's just not in the cards. But that doesn't mean you keep in a relationship. If you need to break up, you need to break up. And it takes one person needing to break up. Right? So you don't have to stay in because you don't want to hurt their feelings or because of anything. And then so you meet somewhere, you drive separate, you sit down, you say, hey, I need to talk to you about something, we need to break up. They're going to come up with a rebuttal, right? They're going to say, hey, but, things like most of the time. Hopefully you've met with counsel, you know why you need to break up, you know the right reasons, and you're able to say, hey, I need to stick to my guns. This is why. If they surprise you with some out of nowhere, and you're like, oh, well, I didn't know you felt that way or something, then I have some concerns that maybe you didn't approach this really seeking counsel and things like that. But let's say that happens, then you could say, hey, I need some time to think about it. Because you need some time to think about it, right? But you don't ever make promises. Hey, we're breaking up, but if you do this, then one day. Or, hey, I need to break up, but we can get back together in so-and-so time or whatever. You could say I'm not going to leave the earth. I'll be around if things are completely different, but I cannot make any promises. That's how you end that. Because you don't want to leave any expectations or anything like this, all right? And then you say this. If you're breaking up because of your relationship with God, you don't say, God told me to break up with you. If you do that, I will jump out of the bush behind and smack you, all right? If you are making a decision to follow God, and that means you're going to have to separate ways, then you say, hey, I am making a decision to put my faith as a priority. And because of that, I need to step away from this relationship. We need to break up, okay? You don't blame God. All right, I need to wrap up. Last thing. Shane, yeah. I don't think we're going to have time, bro. Sorry. I should have told you sooner, but I appreciate you, man. Last thing, and then we're going to wrap this up. What happens if you've messed up? And I really wanted to make sure I touched on this for this, because we're all coming at relationships with different paths, and some of us had paths where we weren't following God, and some of us have paths, there's hurts that we're dealing with. If you've messed up, then I need you to really receive forgiveness that the Lord has for you. Now, I don't know the details. You might be absolutely at fault. And you might think in your mind, I don't deserve forgiveness. You're right. None of us do. You don't deserve it. And yet, God says, I want to forgive you, I love you, and we need to receive that. Allow the Lord to forgive us and walk in that freedom. So whatever you've done, go to the Lord, ask for forgiveness, and really receive it. Mark 3:28 says, truly I say to you, all sins shall be forgiven the sons of men. 1 John 1:9, if we confess our sins, he's faithful and righteous to forgive our sins and cleanse us from all unrighteousness. This next one's really big. Forgive each other. You need to forgive. If you slept with someone, you need to forgive them. Now again, forgiveness is not saying, hey, I'm now saying what we did is okay. It's not that. It's not saying I'm going to put myself in a position to sleep with you again. It's saying, hey, I'm no longer going to hold this debt against you. I'm trusting God to work things out, to carry out justice in his divine, sovereign, gracious way. And I'm just no longer holding this debt. I'm forgiving you, I'm letting it go, and I'm trusting God. You forgive each other. Ephesians 4:32, be kind to one another, tenderhearted, forgiving each other, just as God in Christ also has forgiven you. And that's either way blame game, right? You both played a role. Maybe it was mostly, we still have a job to do to forgive. What do we do next? If you've done something wrong, you receive forgiveness, you forgive, and then you run away from the sin. You flee from lust. You run away so you don't put yourself in that spot again. And by the way, you flee from lust and you run towards God. I talked about that a little bit in the boundaries, some of those verses. But then, and when I say run towards God, what I mean is you walk in redemption. You walk as redeemed sons and daughters of Christ. Now I'm going to read a verse. It's a heavy one. It says, do you not know that the unrighteous, do we not have this up there? No, 1 Corinthians 6, 9 through 11. Do you not know that the unrighteous will not inherit the kingdom of God? Do not be deceived, neither fornicators, nor idolaters, nor adulterers, nor effeminate, nor homosexuals, nor thieves, nor covetous, nor drunkards, nor revelers, nor swindlers will inherit the kingdom of God. This is a part I want you to, that was heavy. That's a lot. We all find ourselves in that list somewhere, and if not that list, I have other ones I'll show you. But it's not done. It says here, such were some of you, but you were washed, you were sanctified, you were justified in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ and in the Son of our God. We started this series talking about running after healthy, strong relationships with God, with friends that are clearly defined, clear dating relationships that are clearly defined with clear boundaries that will bring clarity so that we can know, is this person the person that I'm going to enter into this lifelong covenant with and then enter into a healthy, strong marriage? And remember, when there are strong marriages, families change, communities change, legacies change. We have that power. In order for us to do that, all of this is some heavy lifting. It's some radical stuff. But if we pursue these things, then we're going to get something different than what the world has to offer. We're going to get those healthy, godly relationships. Radical goals require radical solutions, and we could do that. So I want to pray. Do you guys make some noise if you guys want a few minutes of Q&A? What do you guys think? Yeah? Anyone else? Because I can just raise your hand if you want Q&A because you guys stink. No one? All right. So just ask me later. I'm going to pray. We're going to wrap it up. We have donut holes and all of that stuff. Will you guys join me, please? Lord, I thank you for your forgiveness even when I teach for way too long. God, we come before you. We really, truly want what you have for us. We want the marriage that you define and describe as possible in your word. And we want to have the kingdom advancing, God honoring, love and passion filled marriages that you make possible. And so may you help us to have the right approach, to do these things, to have relationships that are shaped by wise counsel and healthy boundaries so that we can attain those marriages. And may you be glorified in it all, every step of the way. God, as we do things different, people are going to notice. I pray they do. Help us to declare of your goodness. We give you these things. We praise you for this series. May you bring fruit from it months and years from now. In your holy name.